Hi, this is the Be Well with Michelle Greenwell podcast. Our heartwarming conversation is designed to lift you on your wellness journey. Grab your cup of tea and enjoy the podcast. Welcome, everyone, to a new series on emotions and healing. And this is the first episode in a series that we're going to have 7 this time. Rather than a trilogy of 3, we're going to expand our conversation and take ourselves on a little journey each week as to how you can start to understand how emotions, metaphors, and the body are all linked together. The stories that we tell ourselves, the emotions that get pocketed, and how the tissue responds to the way we're living our lives and the way things unfold for us. And as we step into these conversations, if you have not been listening to the previous episodes that we've done in this kind of relationship, I just want to bring forward the series that we did on understanding body pain and the other one on body maintenance and living wellness. So please check those out because they have some of the background of things we may be talking about today. We want to make sure you have all the information available to you. All right, as we step into this, we're going to look at how our posture, our physiology, our pain, our habits, and our well-being can all evolve around the way we're feeling, the thoughts we have in our mind, the way that we're looking at our life, and how things are unfolding for us. And we want to explore this through the Chinese medicine theory about how the 5 elements work. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the background of that as well. Okay, before we do our deep dive into this, I want to give you a little bit of background on these 2 lovely people that are joining us today. So Denise Cambiotti has been involved in Touch for Health for several decades, and it's the basis by which she set up her company, Muscle Tuners International. And she does advanced training for body workers and lay people. She works with a system called SIPS, Stress Indicator Point System, which was created by Ian Stubbings and based on the work of Richard Utt before that, and also Life Enhancement Acupressure Protocols, or LEAP, which was created by Dr. Charles Krebs. Denise has a deep understanding of the nature of the brain and its connection to the body and movement, and her programs at Muscle Tuners, as well as Radiant Code Breakers, is changing the way we're understanding and supporting the systems in the body. We're looking at the mind and the spirit and how all of this works together to be well and to be thriving. Her background includes extensive collaboration with physiotherapists, recreational therapists, massage therapists, and movement specialists. And she bridges the gap between physical technique and emotional regulation. Her gift is understanding how the meridian system, the muscle function, and emotional states are going to weave together. And she brings depth, clarity, and compassion, helping clients understand their emotions, that they're not problems, they're indicators of energy imbalance, and that we can be supported, redirected, and transformed. So, Denise, thank you for being here to continue these conversations.
It's a pleasure to be here. Have a podium to talk about these things that are such a new idea for most people.
Yes, and that's true. Old concepts come from thousands of years, but new conversations for so many that haven't heard them before. And then I'm going to introduce now Kate Montgomery. And Kate began her career as a respiratory therapist. Then she transitioned to becoming a holistic health practitioner, a certified sports massage therapist, a naturopathic doctor, and then she became a bioenergetic wellness professional and is an author. So by integrating Touch for Health into her multidisciplinary practice, she became known for bridging Western medical insights with holistic, intuitive approaches to healing. And Kate's worked with elite performers, musicians, and high-level athletes, helping them to navigate stage fright, memory freezing, burnout, performance anxiety, emotional distress during training, imposter syndrome, and even emotional turbulence during retirement transitions. She understands how hydration, nervous system regulation, neurolymphatic points, and biofeedback support emotional resiliency and peak performance. Her work demonstrates that when emotions balance, the body will follow, and when the body balances, emotions soften. So, Kate, thank you for joining in again and bringing your wisdom to the table.
And thank you for having me too. And as Denise said, it's an honor to be able to talk about this stuff. I've been doing this for 40 years. And when you go and you travel, which I have, it's amazing to me who doesn't know anything about this type of work. So this is an honor to be able to talk about it and and hopefully whoever's tuning in will bring more people to the channels and listen to what we have to say, because there's a lot here that everybody can do for themselves too.
Perfect. Thank you, Kate. All right. You know that with the podcast, I always bring in a tea, and that is a way for us to relax, integrate some systems. And so if you don't have a tea brew beside you, you might have a glass of water or a jug of water, in which case you can infuse that water with the energy that we're going to cultivate now. And this is a way for you to get a healing session while you're listening, as well as some of the topics we bring up and the way we bring them up provides a way for your energy to shift. So you may notice where your energy is at before you start this podcast, and then where you'll finish with it when you get to the end. So I'm going to ask here, who am I going to go with? Kate, would you like to share what the tea is in your mug today?
I had to laugh when I read the script. You chose similar herbs.
Perfect.
I know. So before the snow hit and before the cold hit in, I cut my last lemon balm. So I had lemon, a ton of it. I couldn't believe how much had grown in the cold, before it got really cold. So I had a whole bag of that finally got dried, a lemon balm. And then I also cut lavender. So I cut all my lavender buds for the last time over the bushes. And so I infused the two of them together. So it's very calming, soothing, and stimulating at the same time. So to lavender and lemon balm, that's what I did today.
Perfect. Perfect. Yep. You're feeding right into the recipe here with the Awesome Island Passion. And Denise, how about for you?
What called me this morning is the Cape Breton autograph tea that you designed a package of teas for Natalie McMaster, which I am so impressed that that's going out on tour with her. And just how I just love being able to say, I knew Michelle when. In any case, I love it because it's got peppermint in it, but it's not overly so. You can taste the lemon that you have in there. So I've got lemon going on there too today. Today's a big brain day, so I like the ginkgo leaves in there. And then the apple and orange just softens and mellows the peppermint somehow. And the turmeric is there, but it's energetically there, but it's not spicy in any way. So there's a bunch of other yummy things in there, like strawberry leaves, and it just smells like a party going on.
I love that. Oh, beautiful. And I do enjoy the autograph, and I enjoy the affirmation that's on the autograph.
Right. Let me read that one out. Each of us has unique gifts for others to treasure. Create your special signature for others to be inspired. And what a wonderful message for December here in the world where we're at.
Yes. And also with the same idea too about, as we're bringing this conversation forward, it has been that the knowledge has been around for thousands of years. It's been used in Chinese medicine with great, incredible results. And then when we think about how the more we share this knowledge, the more other people can be engaged with their self-care, what are they going to do with it? And that's what I love about the autograph tea is what are your gifts going to do and what are they going to cultivate? Yeah. Okay. So on that same line, then, I'm looking at our conversation today is going to focus on central vessel and governing vessel. So two main channels in the core of the body. And I wanted to highlight that in a beautiful way. There are two T's specifically, one for each. That would be To Be Honest and Old Faithful. But there's a third one, which brings the two of them together. So that's what I chose, which is Awesome Island Passion. And this one has a little symbol in the corner, which I'm just going to share. So if you're listening and you're on the road and you can't see this, I've got a little circle in the top corner, and that's actually a time of day wheel and how the systems come into focus for energy based on the time of day. We're not talking about that today, but the tea was put together based on that. And the affirmation is the bounty of summer sunshine grounds us year round. So as we're all staring at our snow-covered windows today, we're all thinking about where the summer has brought us and what it continues to cultivate for us in our mugs. And I want to bring forward lemon balm. So Kate grows hers and was lucky enough to still be clipping and drying. It's a gentle nervine that calms the mind. It brings emotional clarity. It softens fears, irritability, and overthinking, which I know a lot of people suffer from with all the stuff we're trying to deal with. And spiritually, it helps to release emotional noise, bringing the heart and the mind back into harmony. And then if we look at strawberry leaves, these support grounding, nurturing, and inner sweetness, helps to dissolve emotional tension that can be stored in the gut. It encourages emotional honesty and self-trust, and that's a big one for a lot of people. And spiritually, it reconnects us to simplicity and receives the nourishment we often deny ourselves. Now, what I like to do is put the interest of those two ingredients together. So same what you were doing, Kate, with you brought the lavender and you brought the lemon balm together. They have a partnership. And when we start to bring these recipes together, we really can enhance the qualities of each, which is the same as the three of us having a conversation, bringing to the table all of our skills and our interests. It brings about a new conversation, new opportunity. And that's what the tea is going to do. So I encourage you to take a sip, make sure you smell it first so you can get right into the limbic system and the motor system. Feel the warmth as that tea goes down and finds the core for you. And then allow your emotional body to do an exhale. And I know that's a different way of thinking about things, but sometimes we forget to breathe or we're holding tight. So here we go. And awesome is always like coming home. One of my main blends in the 10 years of the company. It's been our number one tea. All right, there we are. We have the tea underway. We have the herbs joining us in this conversation. And now people are wondering, what is this Chinese medicine 5-element wheel that we're talking about, the theory that is. So I'm going to ask Denise to shed a light on how this 5-element wheel brings us into a different way of thinking about our health and wellness and the vitality in our day. Can you share a little bit about the system?
Absolutely. So hopefully the audience has some idea of the words or the phrase, the 5 elements. You go to stores and you'll see 5-element candle colors, affirmations, words, people who want to work with the elements. They may not have actually dabbled in any of that, but most people have a little passing knowledge. And the Chinese or Asian 5 elements, they're different than the elements that are used in other systems. Help me out here. The Indian version, Ayurvedics, they work with elements as well, but they work with different ones. Beautiful systems. They're models. They talk to us about how does energy move through the body? What does it do for us? What do the elements represent? And it looks at us holistically. And I know today we're working pretty much thinking about emotions in relation to the elements, and specifically the pairing of central vessel and governing vessel. Now, these actually aren't part of the 5 elements. They were brought into the model because chiropractors were the one that were marrying how muscles were connected to organs through these meridian pathways, how meridians are paired. They're paired in systems that are called elements. And they went, well, wait a minute, we have elements for, that represent all the organs, some of the glands. But what about the spine? That's what we're really keen about. What about the nervous system? And so they searched a little bit deeper in Chinese knowledge and found that central vessel suited the purpose beautifully in how it relates to the brain, and how governing works beautifully with the spine. And so together, that's the nervous system. We've got the central and the peripheral represented with those. And that's as fancy as I'm going to get with that. And we start here because the nervous system powers a lot of the energy in the body. And I'm just going to, for those of you that are watching, you're going to see I'm displaying a chart. And got to move the little Zoom bar out of the way a little bit. Is that blocking the screen by any chance for anybody? Okay, great. So here are the names of the elements. If we start with the red one at the top, fire, and notice the arrow moves clockwise to earth and moves clockwise to metal, moves over to water, and then up to wood, and wood feeds back into fire. And the study of this at a very basic level, let me start with water. Water nourishes and grows plants and trees. So now we've gone from water to wood. And if you apply sparks, the trees burn. We have fire. And then when they are reduced to ash, they return to the earth. And in the earth, there's minerals and things like metals that we can mine and shape, and how metal can work to contain water. And so there's these things called Shen cycles and Ko cycles, and they're just models to express how energy works within our system. And if you notice on this chart, there's also arrows that skip an element. So let's say from metal, we can go to wood. So you can form metal into a sharp axe and chop wood. Wood can control the earth by putting its roots down into the earth to stabilize it. Earth can form dikes or dams or, structures to retain water in ponds or the borders of a stream. And water controls fire, obviously. It can put it out, and how fire controls metal by melting it. So this is just very introductory knowledge and in touch for health. You don't need to understand this with 25 years of study. I've taught a number of acupuncturists, and I say, by understanding how these flows go, it identifies what acupressure points would be very powerful to activate. And I kid you not, some of them are going, really? Can it be that simple? And yes, it can. You just activate the points that are shown in the manual, and it works. And yes, if you have more in-depth knowledge, more understanding of the interaction and the interplay between them, you can create different patterns to wake things up. But I have trained some acupuncturists who've gone, I've been beyond trying to understand the theory, and this is so simple. And I went, simple sometimes is the best. Now look up at the top right where we have the governing vessel meridian and the central vessel meridian. And these ones happen to have names of muscles they're attached to. And I just wanted to bring your attention to that for a moment, because today we are talking about governing and central. And as we go on with the rest of our talks, we're going to talk about earth individually apart from metal, water, wood. And then this fire one is a little bit kind of interesting because there are 4 meridians. So we're going to split those up into 2. So now we have the 5 elements split into 2, which is 6. And then we have this nervous system stuff going on. So let me stop share there and just say, ladies, is that pretty much your knowledge of the very basics?
Mm-hmm.
Great. And also when we work with elements, there are representations. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about yin and they've heard about yang, and they don't really know what that means, but they know that they're supposed to be in balance with one another. And your background today, Michelle, is perfect because you have the darker gray on the wall color on your room, which represents the yin, and the white of your mantle represents the yang. And so things that are in tend to have less sun on them. Things that are outside receive more sun. They're a little bit lighter and brighter. And all these are metaphorical in nature. And I want to just talk for a moment about metaphors. And here is something our audience can apply. If you're out of balance emotionally, if you can get energy unstuck, why wouldn't we do it? So, for example, central and governing has a lot to do with what's going on blocking our goals. And it has a lot to do with trust and support and releasing burdens. So if you're feeling burdened, your lack of trust, jump into the element wheel somewhere. And let me just say, let's start with fire. The emotions related to fire element, the major one is joy, absolute joy. And maybe you're stuck in an emotion and joy is the last thing you could connect with at the moment. But ask yourself the question, what is one thing that brings me joy? It might not be right now in the moment, but think of something that brings you joy. And then move to the next element, which is earth. And earth has a lot to do with sympathy and empathy. So in relation to where you're feeling stuck, can you feel sympathy or empathy? Are you feeling too much? Do you need to back it off? And then we move into the metal element, which has a lot to do with guilt, grief, and regret. And emotions are not negative or positive on their own. It's our reaction to them. So it is okay to feel guilt, grief, or regret. Just not get stuck in it. Recognize that if that's what you're feeling, that's what you're feeling. And then move to water, which has a lot to do with fear and anxiety. And in my world, I see when water's out of balance regularly for people, to me, this is very metaphorically related to boundaries, because the water element has it's connected to the kidneys and the bladder, and we are animals, really. And what do dogs do when you take them out for a walk? They will mark their boundaries. And so I have just come to recognize in my world that when this comes up repetitively, it's out of balance for people. Take a look at, do you have appropriate boundaries or not? Or do you have too much fear or anxiety going on? And if you do, can you switch that to awe? AWE. Like, how awesome that you get to have these experiences in life. Then we bring it over to wood. And wood is interesting because a lot of people connect it to the energy of anger. And I like sometimes to say there's stronger emotions. Besides anger, there's rage, and there's softer emotions like frustration. And so when you hear anger, it's not always, oh, your liver's out of balance and your wood element's out of balance. Yeah, maybe, but maybe it's not because of anger. Maybe it's just that everyday simmering frustration we have. So what can you do to let it go? Recognize it. And also, I want to indicate anger is not a negative emotion if you're not punching somebody in the face. If you're using anger to express, what are you doing? Why are you acting like an idiot? Why are you doing that? You're stepping in my boundaries. You're stepping on my lines. You're affecting my life with what you're saying and doing, and you're mad at somebody. And they go, I had no idea. Sorry. Isn't that positive then? So just metaphorically, think about the different flavor of emotions that you drift through in the day, just naturally. We often go in and out of emotions every minute and a half. And if you feel stuck in any of them, pick something else and ask yourself a question. Where in my life today could I feel more joy? Where could I feel more empathy? Where could I feel more awe, for example? Where could I feel more courage? So I'll just stop there because this isn't a whole class and I have to let the rest of you speak. But the model of the 5 elements, just looking at the emotions of them, is so rich.
Thank you, Denise. And as people are listening and thinking about it, how easy was that when you said, think of something joyful? And it's like, oh, and you've already forgotten where you're standing because you're already forward into what is my next thought. And that's one of the key things about working with these ideas is that it can be instantaneous. And it doesn't mean you have to find somebody else to support you with it. You can do this on your own. So I'm going to shift our gear a little bit now that we've got that background. And I'm going to ask Kate about her experience with emotions because she's worked with the elite athletes and performers who will have tremendous emotional pressure. One, on how to do their performance, whether they're satisfied with what they did, their outcomes. It can be quite a journey for them. And I know with your experience with emotions and patterns, you're dealing with lots of fear, doubt, anxiety. Can you share some of the experiences and what these tools have meant for you to be able to support athletes?
Well, thank you, Denise, for the background. It's a good thing that people will know that part of it, to know, again, science, and there's stuff behind it. One of the things, I've worked with a lot of elite athletes, musicians, over the years. And back in the 80s, 90s, I was privileged to work with some top track and field athletes. And one of the things that you learn about them is that they are in another dimension. They're on a different level than we are. They are so in tune with their body that they can make the slightest adjustments in a heartbeat because they know it doesn't feel right. When I first went to a competition as a sports therapist, massage therapist up in San Jose, and it was a trials for the Olympics. It was in track. And I happened to, like many of us that were lined up there with our tables working on these athletes, and you find that as incredible as they are, they tend to have this ability to compensate to the degree that's amazing. And then they compete and they win or they come in and place. But when I added Touch for Health to my repertoire of things that I could do and start to monitor the muscles specifically that I had time for at that in the short amount of time that we had, you get to see what's out of balance and how in the heck they're doing it. I don't know. But as I got to know them and understand, they became more fine-tuned. And I think that's what any of the stuff from Touch for Health does. No matter what part of it is, there's a fine-tuning that it does. And when you can deliver that to a musician or an athlete and anybody that's of that caliber, they click. They just grab it and they can take it and run like crazy. And those are the things so that when you look at the water element and the large intestine and you look at metal and you look at all the different elements, but you also look what's part of them, you start doing the muscle response with the specific muscles that they need to work the best and the most efficient for, say, running. If we use water as this one, which we were talking about, LaTanya was a 400-meter hurdler. And one of the things that you have to do is you have to have a psoas muscle that works because you're lifting your legs so high, and it's the hip flexor that's doing it. Your hip hiker, your quadratus lumborum, but it's that psoas muscle when she has to jump over those hurdles at such speed. And what was interesting to me when I was able to finally work on her that night before the trial, I don't know how the psoas was even functioning. When I was testing it, it didn't turn on. It wasn't holding. And so I had to go through the response to see what everything was. But then once we got that done, and of course it was drink a glass of water first. Drink a glass of water because it's the water element, and psoas needs water and it's the kidneys. And that was important so that when I started my assessment was to drink water because she was dehydrated. So when you start to put and add everything together to get the body to turn on again and to get the muscles and the nervous system and the structure to be solid, then you have boundaries. Then you know that everything bilaterally works to the nth degree. And that's what you need. And as I did all this the night before, and you have to be careful because the night before a race, you have to really watch what you can do. And I was just keeping my fingers crossed that I didn't overdo it. But what was so nice, her body was so equipped, her nervous system could just take it. And it was like it rewired overnight, totally rewired. And when I saw her the next day, it was a different athlete. It was one that her issue was this breathing was the biggest issue with her. And we may have said this something in another podcast, but not only was she able to get her leg higher and get over those to get over the hurdles faster, she breathed through it. That was what she was known for, was that she didn't breathe. And when you don't breathe, you lose power, major power, because you're not oxygenating, you're not even moving the water. You're not moving anything, no fluids, no nutrients, no anything. And because I was able to free up, and we did emotional stuff too, because there was a fear factor. There was with her. Am I going to make it? Am I as good as the rest of them? And yet this lady was very talented. But when she ran that final, lifted her leg higher and faster. Her response in the nervous system was so fast. She was going so fast, it scared her, and she slowed up and took second. She qualified, but she could have won. But she never threw up too. That was the other side to this. Everybody was waiting for her to go to the corner and throw up because she did it after every race. And this time she didn't. And she came over to me and she says, "What did you do to me?" She knew something had changed, but she didn't know what it was because she's so fine-tuned to recognize her body's innate ability. When you add what we do to helping someone like this become what they dream of, the the oh, your heart stops. You feel that emotion as much as they do, and give them what they want, which is to win, and set a record, set a time record too. We moved on and went to North Carolina for the Olympic Festival. She took the gold. She won that one. And she called me and said, "I'm still rubbing points. I'm still rubbing my neurolymphatics. I'm still holding vasculars. I'm still doing this. I'm doing that." And when you can show them the things that they can do for themselves, excuse me, and get that response that she won the gold, qualified to go to Pan Am in Indianapolis that year. Oh, and she took third in the Pan Am Games. And she's up against Jamaica and the really top runners in the world for this. And she took third. That was incredible just for that. She placed, she took the bronze. So those are the things that this type of work does. It allows people to hone in that capacity, excuse me, to become great, to fine tune to such a degree that they know there's a difference and they feel it. There's no fear, there's no doubt, there's no anxiety even. They step up to the podium with anticipation. There's an intensity. And it's like sharpening the nervous system is sitting there on the edge of on the track, and they're just vibrating, holding still for the gun to go off. But that is an innate sense. They, above anybody, have it. It's exciting to watch. It's exciting to watch them run and become. Same thing with a musician or an executive. You look at them and they have these abilities that I don't have. My abilities are different, but theirs are up here because they seem to be in tune with those angels. They're telling them how to feel, how to respond, how to shift and adjust. There's no fear. My musicians have no fear. They are anticipating going out onto a stage, entertaining a group of people, singing the song they wrote. They have no fear. I was talking to a gentleman last night, and he says, "I'm excited. I go out there and know what I'm going to do. And it's like, I can't wait to go out and spread joy, to make people happy, to listen to what I do." And every musician I've ever worked with is that way. When they feel good, the playing is amazing because their hands don't hurt, their mind is sharp, they remember the words, memory's there. And that's what all this does. It fine-tunes the nervous system, it fine-tunes the memory in the brain, it fine-tunes everything. And I think that's what we give them. If you just teach them one little thing, my favorite is the neurolymphatics, of course. But it's an instantaneous thing. I watched one of my guy that was doing a high jump, and he was standing there. He'd had my book, and I'd worked on him and stuff, and he's standing there just before he's going to run and jump. And He's doing stomach 36, which was one of my go points, and he's hitting large intestine 4, another go point, and he's rubbing the neural lymphatics for his quadriceps, and he's doing everything. And I was sort of laughing because I was sitting there watching somebody actually doing it. That's the incredible thing is they're not afraid to do it because they know that it's going to help them do what they need to do. And yeah, that's for all the science that we all know and we know why it works, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. As long as you know that I don't feel pain anymore and my muscles don't hurt anymore when I rub the neural lymphatic for my quadriceps or my hamstrings or my glutes, that's it. As long as it makes me lifting weights easier and I can just bench it, fine. It doesn't matter. It's nice to give it and it's nice for them, but they look, I don't care. How do I do this? How do I make it? How do I get what I want? That's why Iron Man was so successful, is that all they had to know was to do these 3, 4 things while they ran, while they biked, that would get them across that finish line with no injury. Recovery would be phenomenal and just get them home safely without any problem. So that's what this does, and that's what Sports Touch does. Yahoo!
Perfect. It's so interesting, having worked with lots of children who have lots of fears going out onto a stage. And when you eliminate that, they think that they're supposed to have fear because that's what people talk about. And that's kind of where they start from, those very first performances where they go to do their 60 seconds. But when they realize the joy that they can have and that those emotions don't need to be there, I mean, how empowering. I want to take you to something you said, Kate, is when you were working with the athlete and you discovered that the psoas muscle wasn't working. And I know when people are listening, they don't know much about muscle monitoring. What are we measuring or how are we checking those muscles? And then what does it mean to have information that the psoas muscle isn't working? Can you just share a little bit of that?
Surely. The psoas muscle is a hip flexor, meaning that it's one that helps you lift your leg. We sometimes think that the quadricep, the large thigh muscle, is what lifts our leg. It isn't. It's the secondary muscle. The psoas muscle is the one that flexes and brings your leg up. And so for a hurdler, which is who I was talking about, she needed to lift that leg as high as she could in order to get over the hurdle. When I muscle tested her, I would put the leg into an extension, but it's bringing 2 ends of the muscle together and pressing. I can't show it right now, but when I did this, the leg got, if we use the word weak, it didn't connect with the nervous system. And I did that bilaterally. She also had a long leg, short leg. Well, that makes sense because she's hurdling with one leg that's going over more than the other leg. The left leg is your plant leg, and the hurdle leg is the right leg. So that leg's a little bit shorter. So because I do sports massage, I was able to release those muscles and get them even, but also turn that muscle back on by rubbing neural lymphatic reflex points, holding neurovasculars on her head as well, and showing her how to get it to do it before she even ran or got up there. And so, the neurolymphatic is you go down to the navel and you go 1 inch out and 1 inch up in the abdomen and rub deeply, because you rub not softly, but you rub firmly into that area, and you open up that energy flow through that muscle and detoxify it. It sheds the lymph and it gets rid of byproducts really fast. That shifts it and makes the muscle work better. And for her, that's what she needed. So I hope that's a little bit of an explanation. But go ahead, Denise.
I just want to add to that because you're going, well, it's the hip flexor, and somehow she's been getting over those hurdles. what's been going on in her body is other muscles were compensating
Of course.
to do the action.
Right.
And those muscles were not designed to make that happen.
Mhm.
So the iliacus, which is part of the fibers of all that, they were working harder than they should have. And the pectineus, the glutes, there were different things that are going on to allow that action to take place. And that's what causes injury,
True.
because those other muscles weren't designed to do the lift, turn, plant if the psoas wasn't doing its job fully or even really at all. And the point that you're making is these athletes think they're okay
Mhm.
when they're not.
Right.
And how, if an athlete that's tuned into their body, and I've seen the football players and all that, they're going, oh, this isn't firing right. So a lot of them are they know when they're on and when they're off, when the muscle's working, when it's not working. But how is the average office worker, housewife, sorry to use that term, you know, how are we supposed to know that some of our muscles haven't shown up to work today? And because they haven't, that is why you have pain at the joints. That is why some muscles are tight and will not release with massage. Like, well, they'll feel good for a little bit, but they'll come right back. And so I just wanted to bring into the conversation that the muscles are compensating for one another and coming back to the elements. Elements compensate for one another. And sometimes if somebody's not carrying their share of the load, somebody else go, well, fine, I'll do it all then. And once you get your system in a snit that way, it takes a bit to unravel. And how do you do it? When do you do it? What do you do exactly? Well, you use this thing called muscle monitoring because the body will show you.
Mhm.
So I mentioned compensation in the beginning when I started working with her. I just didn't mention every single muscle that has to compensate for the psoas muscle not working. I'm only focusing on one muscle just to give it as a demonstration, an example.
Mhm.
Well, obviously.
Obviously, trying to keep it simple.
Well, we work holistically, and for this conversation, you were focusing on one. And to bring it back to the audience, is what was going on there is a whole bunch of muscles were trying to help who shouldn't have had to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And how often do we, in our day, and I'm thinking about people who do household chores or have a job where they extend beyond their energy capacity, and so they just push through because somehow it'll happen and they don't really care how. They're just going to push through and the body's just going to adjust. And that's that process where we start to build those patterns of other muscles doing things they shouldn't be doing. And then they wonder why when they bend over to get a box and their back goes out and they say, well, I was just lifting a tiny box. No, it wasn't that. You'd already created a beautiful pattern that set you up for when you lifted a lighter box and the body was able to say, this pattern doesn't work. You need to fix it. But then how do we fix it? So that's our conversation today. Okay, so let's move from there. We could just go on in so many directions, and I know all of us get excited about talking about it. I wanted to move a little bit into how experiences. So, Denise, you were talking about the metaphors and how those elements work with those metaphors and how different emotions can bring imbalances to the system. So, can you talk a little bit about some of the self-care techniques that we use that can help with some of those emotions, like ESRs or meridian tracing, or really my favorite is to trace central and governing meridians and bring the nervous system back into balance. Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So when we learn a little bit about the elements and what they do, how they support us, and you sense that they're out of balance, for example, central and governing, you're not focusing as sharp as you know. It's hard to concentrate. The brain's just not clicking on all cylinders. There are some fantastic self-care techniques. So let me start, as you were mentioning, the ESRs. That stands for Emotional Stress Release Points. They're acupressure points right here on the frontal bone, just above the colored part of your eyes. So just by putting 2 fingers there and touching there, you're actually helping drain emotions that are cycling through your system. The quality of touch is very important. Anybody that's ever blown up a pool floaty where you have to pinch the little valve, and then when you let go and you get ready to put the little plug in, there's a valve in there that literally keeps the air on the floaty from floating out, or, your kid, the air got out of there while they're swimming around. That wouldn't be so good. So quality of touch is important. And it's the same thing when you're ready to collapse the floaty. You can't push on the valve too hard or the air can't come out. So you just have to touch it, but not too hard and not too soft. Well, actually, you can't go too soft on this one. Seems incredibly simple. I've shared this with some big name coaches, and they're walking around their condo and they're shrieking on the phone. I don't believe this. What did you do? What? Because they can be in a real state that is just not productive. And I say, touch these points, or simply put your whole hand across your forehead very lightly and think the thoughts you're having about the thing that's stressing you out right now. Just take a few breaths. And as basic as that is, there can be more. However, that is enough. And when we teach this to nurses in hospitals, calming somebody getting ready to go to surgery who's worried or one thing or the other, how many mothers will soothe a child's brow? How many times have you seen people get bad news and they put their hand on their forehead, but they usually press too hard and they're going, "Oi." This is a very natural subconscious position that we can use with intention. That's emotional stress release. And then what you were talking about, the central governing, the central meridian, for example, sorry, a little odd with my virtual screen on. Okay, so central meridian starts just below the pubic bone and comes up to the chin. You don't even have to touch the body. You can do it with one hand, just stroke upwards. This is the direction it is meant to flow. So if it is stagnant, if it has stalled, you can just go like that. Or, I know a grandmother, she does it with her grandkids. You point there, you come up, and you put your arms out like a heart, sending love to you. And do this, 5, 7 times. Really fabulous to get that flow flowing, to wake up the brain, because your fingers act like little magnets and they pull the energy up the channel the way it's meant to. And same thing on the back of the body, is very much in the center line of the body. Tailbone, bring it up as far as you can, kind of toss it up there, catch the ball, and pull it over your head to end under your nose, right in the center under your nose. So just by doing that a few times, you're waking up the energy of the spine going up into the brainstem. So very simple technique and very powerful. And there are a lot of people walking around in the world who have gotten overwhelmed and their brain is just and just tracing a meridian. For example, the central vessel one is the easiest. If I find myself in a bit of confusion, I will just do this. And then you do it quickly. You're pulling that energy up quickly and you're done. Is that basically what you needed to know as a couple of self-care tips to demonstrate that?
And just for that realization that if you're having an experience at the moment and that emotion has come up, and maybe it is that anxious, you've coming up to something, and then to know, oh, I could just trace this line, and then all of a sudden you realize you've shifted to something else, and that anxiety isn't even there anymore, and you didn't realize that it disappeared. Your focus went completely in a different direction. It's just so simple what we can do with that. And central and governing, being that you are looking at the brain and the spine, you're bringing everything in that core back together. So such a beautiful, beautiful piece. Okay, so now let's shift a little bit into that Ko and Shen cycle. And Denise, you did a good job of describing the whole cycling of it. There's two parts that I just want to bring up for people so that they can realize there's two ways that the body can deal with things. So one is to nurture, and one is, they call it creation, destruction. I like to call it changing patterns. But can you just talk just a little bit about that in regards to regulating emotions, but also just to bring the body back into balance?
Okay, I'm going to bring it back a notch, because you showed on the top of your package how there's a time of day wheel. Mm-hmm. And we spoke about that, I think, in our very, very first episode. Mm-hmm. So one of the meridians is most active at that time of day, supporting a specific organ. Chinese had observed that. And so over 24 hours, there's what I like to call like a relay race, an energy baton that gets passed on to the next organ, the next meridian. And how that goes on is called the time of day cycle. But there are deeper patterns. When we look at the 5 elements and we ask the body, or choose to speak to the body in how can we nurture if we have a blockage. Let me bring that chart back up. Let's say there's a blockage. Ladies, Kate, pick any element name.
Pick any element. Okay, water.
Okay. So if we have a blockage on water, water is literally, there could be like a brick wall here between what should be flowing from water to wood. And so wood isn't getting the energy it should, because if the energy is flowing properly over 24 hours, this energy is just continually flowing in this nurturing cycle, this generating cycle. But if there's a block here at water, you get a backup, and this gets overfull. You get pressure, and the guys downstream get less energy. And it doesn't have to be a full block. Let me get back to my Zoom screen. How do I do that? There we go. It can be a little bit of blockage. So if you think about beavers who are building a dam in a stream, before they complete that dam, there's water flowing through, just not as much as getting downstream. But when that dam is pretty much solid, there's just a trickle of energy that's getting through there, a trickle of water. And so we work with that by understanding that concept. And that can happen whether it's generational, as I was just demonstrating, or whether it is going in, I've learned about the control cycles terms, Michelle, and you call it creation and destruction. Right. So there's also all these models from the Asian culture about how the mother supports the daughter, so on and so forth. And this mother supports that daughter, so on and so forth, all the way through. Now we're talking about a grandmother relationship where the grandmother will come in and say, you stop that. you're spoiling my grandchild, or I'm going to be the one to spoil the grandchild. And so we have these patterns that can go this way. So the whole family model of the Asian culture, it's so fascinating. I've worked with a number of Asians who have come from China, and their family structure is still very, very antique. Some of them are very modern, but there are some, especially the middle-aged people, were brought up with the grandmother rules the roost. She controls what happens under this roof. And in the body, our organs can act in the same way. And the training that we can provide makes it super simple to support those systems that are not getting the right amount of energy without needing a whole lot of theory.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So as people are thinking about what they've known about wellness and being in balance and having the emotions really flowing in and out or not, this is a different way to look at this picture and to understand how we can support ourselves by looking at other areas and how we can also bring more balance and flow into the systems. So I'm going to move the question over to Kate because I want to talk a little bit about how you built some daily protocols, because your books have special ways of bringing things together. Can you share with our audience how those daily rituals can help keep the emotions balanced so that it's a much more even day or joyful?
Wow, this is a good one. Emotional balance. So in the book, in Sports Touch, there is a chapter on visualization. And one of the things I would do after I had done all the testing and everything, and we were balanced, but we would go through the visualization process. And I would have them see and run the race before they even got there. See, hear, smell, taste, hear the sounds, hear everything. See the colors of the runners with you or ahead of you or whatever. See everything in vivid color and live it now before and the end point. What happens at the end? Have you made your goal? And so that was one of the things that we would do. But in the process of that, we would run through the pattern and through their visualization, and I would be monitoring their emotions as they had their hand on their forehead. And as we went through each one of those, they would hit a certain point within that run, and all of a sudden they would go weak, if we use those terms. And I'm going, oh, okay. So halfway point, we fall down. The muscle doesn't want to go any farther. So I would go and test, say, the quadricep. And we would look at that. But we would also look at the emotion that would go with this. And I would just start rambling ones off. Or they would say, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? What's the first thing that you feel? And we would go through patterns of different words and different things. And then we would find it. And then as he or she would say it, I would be testing the muscle. And I also tested the muscle in range of motion. I didn't just stay in the one position. I always moved through whatever the cycle, like if they're on a bicycle or if they run, where is that muscle in that? And where does it stop and start to not be 100%? And as we did that, we would hit that point and then we would start holding the points and for chill and ESR. But at the same time rubbing neural lymphatics and them seeing it again as they ran. It was amazing to watch the body strengthen just from letting go of the emotion. We could say fear, whatever they were thinking, but um, usually it's like, I'm tired. I can't go any farther, but the muscle's saying I'm done. But if it's not done, if you rub a point, say you rub for your quads, and then it perks up, then what do you say? You say, I'm strong, I'm resilient, I can do anything, I can run faster. And that's what we would put into the tape. We would put a new affirmation in there, a new thought process would go back into the tape. I always call it the computer, the biocomputer. So let's put a different file in there and rubbing those points. So if he or she's rubbing the quadriceps, which is underneath the rib cage, as they ran, and saying, I am strong, I'm resilient, blah, blah, blah. And then they did, and they were that way. So this has already been done before they actually do the race. And it was exciting to watch them come over the finish line because it was almost like they they had the best race. It was so much joy, so much happiness because they didn't have any aches or pains and they felt wonderful. The recovery was phenomenal. And that's where some of the coaches could never understand why they never had pain, why they never had residuals. It's because they were doing the simple little techniques. And that's what we did. So you can clear it yourself if you understand the connection between mind and body and get it in motion to replace one tape for another tape and then just go for it. But that's what I did. That's how I did it. But the rituals were there to help them know that this is something that they could do to prepare the body, but also the mind also, so that they could, get the best out of the race that they were going to do.
How beautiful it is that you can go into the body, ask a question, get an answer, and then be able to, just what you're saying, just be able to walk yourself right through a whole situation by understanding how the body's reacting in all of those cases, rather than just assuming, because a lot of people will fill in the blank, oh, it's because of. But you actually have real time. You have real time with information right from the body. And then you can address it right there. How beautiful. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, yes, crossing the finish line or the performance where I know we like to say, it was in the pocket, right? You were just right in the pocket. Totally, everything was in balance. And some people wait eons to find that experience and finally get to there, thinking that it might need to be because they practiced for so long that they could finally find the pocket, not realizing that it's the experience of that balance and hearing the body state the challenges it's got. It's so beautiful. Okay, we have covered a lot of material for an introduction to emotions and healing. And there's so much more yet to come. We're going to move from this topic into the next session is going to be on the sovereign fire element. So Denise had stated about how there were these 4 meridians that are part of the fire element. And so we're going to be looking at that joy, love, hatred, energy that scatters, and in relation to the heart and the small intestine systems. So we hope that you'll get ready to tune in for that. Try the techniques that we shared today. Think about the way Kate has set up protocols so that you have this ability to really transform. And then think about where in your day you might be able to fill that in. So we're going to discover more about emotional patterns that are shaping posture, our memory, focus, digestion, sleep, relationships. So many times we fill in the blank with our mind thinking it's because of, and we're going to look at it in a different perspective, and you might find some answers that surprise you, but also work really well. If you haven't listened to those other trilogies that we talked about, we explore a little bit more about the muscle monitoring. That's something that is really profound when you have the opportunity to dive in a little bit deeper. So we invite you to do that. And as you're listening to these podcasts and you have the opportunity to comment, share, and even just do a like or a love on them, we would so love for you to do that so that other people can find these conversations. And as you can share them out with the people you know who might be influenced by some of the ideas we're offering, we would love for you to be able to do that. So with that, I'm going to take what's left of my tea. I'm going to have to start making a pot, ladies, because, I keep sipping away. But cheers. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. I so appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. And as you finish today, remember that you've had a healing session. So you might be feeling a little bit more balanced. Emotions might be feeling a little bit more joyful, calm, or feeling like there aren't those monkey thoughts running through your head. And that's great because that's what we geared for today. So with that, we'll close this one off and we'll look forward to the next podcast that you'll be able to share with us. Take care, everyone. Be well.
Happy holidays to everyone, too. Happy holidays. Be safe.
Thank you for listening to Be Well with Dr. Michelle Greenwell. There are a couple of resources I want to just point out. When you go to the website, greenwellcenter.com, you'll have a pop-up window. That pop-up gives you the top 8 easy stress releasers that you can use every day. That's something you can put beside your computer, the bathroom mirror, beside the bedside table. A great resource. Also, my YouTube channel. It is full of playlists with all kinds of different ways that you can activate energy and bring vitality into your day. You can find that when you go to YouTube at Michelle Greenwell. And last, if you're a Linktree person, Linktree, linktr.ee/Greenwell Center. That has all my resources in one spot. Those are for intricate little things that you can't get everywhere. And it's a wonderful way for me to be able to share all the different aspects of the kind of work I do. So thank you for listening. Be sure to drink that tea. And if you want to have the tea blend that was shared in the podcast today, then be sure to check out CapeBretonTea.ca. Have a wonderful day.